without the microphone. Girls in the back, can you hear me? Back table, no? Yes? Mike? Okay.
I use the mic on and off. Having more rats remember to be taller.
What is missing in the Megillah? What do you learn in elementary school? The Megillah. Megillah's Esther, Purim story. What's the thing that's missing? Hashem's name. And we have been taught that Purim and Pesach are opposites. What's missing in the Haggadah? Moshe's name. And even the story of Purim, the story of Purim, the book is called Megillas Esther, after a human being. The whole book is about people and not about God. And the Haggadah is about God and not about people. The sources in front of you, which I'm not going to go through directly, but every once in a while I'll reference. I'd like to suggest to you this morning that perhaps, I thought I had more time, that perhaps there's another story of Yetzias Mitzrayim than the one you knew before you entered this room. Was there a resistance movement in Egypt? We picture God came down, last week's Parsha, God spoke to Moshe, go take the Jews out. The Jews were unwilling participants in their own salvation, and God did everything in Yetzias Mitzrayim. But I'd like to suggest to you 4 proofs to the fact that there was a resistance movement. There were human beings fighting the decree in Egypt. So first of all, in Roman numeral number 1, I gave you a bunch of sources about the midwives, about the mialdos. If I ask you, how do you translate mialdo ha'ivriot? How do you translate those 2 words? You assume it's what? Jewish midwives, right? Mialdo ha'ivriot. Why doesn't, think about that. Mialdo ha'ivriot. If it was Jewish midwives, what should say mialdo? Ivriot. What's the hay? Mialdo ha'ivriot. The mialdo, the midwives, for the Jews. I ask you another question. The Abarbanel, if you look at the Abarbanel in the middle of the page, ask this question in the left column. What was Paro thinking? He's going to go, we were always taught, you were taught in elementary school, who were the Jewish midwives? They were? Shifra and Puah, right? Shifra and Puah, that the pasuk says, but we're taught who, Chazal say, who are Shifra and Puah? Miriam and Yocheved, right? So then Abarbanel asks an obvious question. What was Paro thinking? Paro went to 2 Jewish women, to Miriam and Yocheved, and asked them to kill Jewish babies? What level of success did he think he was going to have with this? So the Abarbanel, you see in the Chamalim, which she gives you a list towards the bottom of the left of page 1 of different mafarshim that say a similar thing. Say no, miyaldo ha'ivriot means midwives of the Jews. These were not Jewish women. And that's why Paro thought that they would listen. So what does it mean, Vatirena esa what? Elohim is the way we normally translate. They feared God. Look at the bottom of page 1. Parshas Mishpatim. It has 3 times in Parshas Mishpatim. Level of Masechah Sanhedrin. The Gemara makes a big deal about this when we learn the size of a bezdin. What does that? There's another translation to the word Elohim, and that's what? Anyone see at the bottom, the Rashi, the underline, judges. Elohim can mean judges. I suggest to you, if you go with the Abarbanel, what this means is that the non-Jewish women feared the Jewish leaders, not God. They feared the Jewish leaders. Vayaslahem batim. So you're always taught in elementary school, what's vayaslahem batim mean? They got batim. The midwives, they were what? Bate what? Bate kahuna, bate Leviah, Miriam and Yocheved are paid off by God by having children who are going to be leaders, great-grandchildren. All their descendants will be the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people. If the Abarbanel, already in the right column, suggests to you, V'yaslahem batim, efshal lefarshim milasham kiyase elo him shehu bemes la'osher hakavod. The same mikvah yotze midei pshuto. V'yaslahem batim is what? They were paid off. The Jewish leaders paid off the non-Jewish midwives not to listen to Paro. There were Jews fighting the decree of killing the Jewish babies. And the Jewish leadership, they weren't just waiting for God to come and save them, but they were paying off the non-Jewish midwives. So here's a first proof to the fact that there was a resistance movement in Egypt. Jews were taking a role in their own salvation before Moshe is born, before God speaks to Moshe. If you look at Roman numeral 2 on page 2, there's a suggestion here, and it's really, there's a whole summary on the back page, forgive my handwriting, that there were really two stories of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's one story that you learned last week in shul, that you learned last week in school. The story that you knew before you walked in the door here today. God came down, he saved the Jews from Egypt. And therefore, at the top of page 2, when we're introduced to Moshe's parents, Vayikach ish mibeit Levi, Vayikach et bat Levi. Some man from the house of Levi married a woman from the house of Levi. Who are those masked men? Who's the man? Amram, and the woman is... Why are the names missing? Why are the names missing? Why would you... There used to be a show on television, Dragnet. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. Now, they used to tell real-life stories. Why would you not mention the names of these great people? It takes up less letters, less space in the Torah to mention the names. And if you look at the top of page 3, in this week's Parsha, in Va'era, starting in Pasuk Yudal, all the way to Pasuk Chava there, you have a whole lineage of Amram and Yocheved, who their parents are, who their grandparents are, who Amram marries. You have Amram's wife here. So why is the Torah not mentioned in Parsha Shmos? Why not put the names in? So the Ramban suggests in the middle of page 2, the Torah's in a rush. Very strange, because it's fewer letters. The Nachshoni at the bottom of page 2 has a very appropriate idea for today. Nachshoni says, you know why it says, V'yikach ish mibeit Levi and bat Levi? It's trying to emphasize that in our religion, we believe that the Savior is born of a man and a woman. That's why it says, ish mibeit Levi and bat Levi. As opposed to other religions that are celebrating other things today. We don't believe in a divine birth. We believe that our leaders are born of humans. It's a very nice idea, but if it said Amram and Yocheved, it would make that point also. So on the back of the booklet, on page 4, I summarized for you a very interesting article from a fellow I knew that passed away since he wrote this, Baruch Katz, an Israeli fellow in Gush, who has a fascinating article in the Megadim Journal where he compares the story of Parsha Shmos and Parsha Ve'era. He says Parsha Shmos is the story of the divine role, the story you knew before you walked in here, of Yetzias Mitzrayim, God's role. This week's Parsha is the story of the human role in Yetzias Mitzrayim. And he actually compares it, as you see in the middle of the page, to Adam 1 and Adam 2, Rabbi Soloveitchik's famous idea about the first two chapters of creation, where it basically tells, if you look in the first two chapters of the Torah, tells the story of the creation of the world over again with different facts. Rabbi Soloveitchik's theory is that one is focused on divine world, one's focused on human world to some extent. What role God's role is, you can see, I gave you the comparison, the summary of his article. But Baruch Katz takes that idea and compares it to Ve'era and Bo. The reason why the names are missing in last week's Parsha, why is a man from the house of Levi married a woman, a daughter of Levi? Because it's emphasizing God's role. What you thought before you walked in here. God saved the Jews in Egypt. They were not involved at all. Rabbi Soloveitchik suggested a different shot. I don't think this is printed anywhere. I didn't check out the new Rabbi Soloveitchik Chumash yet. But listen to this unbelievable idea that he suggested, which I didn't put in here. Why are there no names? Because they were all doing it. All the Levi men were marrying Levi women, and they were defying the decree. Other people said, we're not having children, they're going to be killed. How can you bring a child into a world like this? We're not doing it. But you know what the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu? Well, why did Paro know that this was a Jewish baby? Because there were lots of Jewish babies floating down the river. There were a lot of Levi babies that were being hidden in caves and all over. The only difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and those other babies is that Moshe Rabbeinu made it through. There was a Bas Paro. So our second proof is Parshas Ve'era, this lineage that makes Moshe Rabbeinu, makes Yocheved to be an organic, they grew up organically amongst the Jewish people. And if you notice back, it's so clear that the Chumash is emphasizing this. If you look at the end, on page 3 at the top, Pasach Chavav, the last two psukim that are underlined, the Torah, after giving you the whole history, telling you who's Aaron's parents, who's Moshe's parents, look at Pasach Chavav. Who Aaron Moshe, Asher Amar Hashem Lahem, Hosiu B'nai Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Haim Hamidar B'nai Paro, Haim Hamidar, they're the ones, not God. Melech Mitzrayim Hosiu B'nai Yisrael, who Moshe Aaron. It couldn't be clearer, as Baruch Katz points out. Parshas Ve'era is emphasizing the human role, Moshe and Aaron's role, not the story you and I know from the Haggadah. The Haggadah we know is Parshas Shmos. The Parshas Ve'era, this week's Parsha, emphasizes the human role. But let's go back to Bas Paro. You ever wonder why is her name missing? Also, it's a special woman. Why not mention her name? So if you look in the middle of page 3, that idea that her name is Bacha is from Divrei Hayami, right? Because it says in the pasuk there in the middle on the right of page 3, Bitcha Bat Paro. What's her story? Why did she do this? Why did Paro's daughter defy the decree? Is she crazy? Why did she? It just was a moment of weakness. And she wasn't planning to do this. So if you look at the Gemara in Sota, forgive the photocopy, right under it, the Gemara in Sota says, you know why she was in the river? Right? Tered Bas Paro l'chotz al Yor, Yordin l'chotz miklulei avia, Tvila l'shem gerus. Bas Paro is not a a heroine. Bas Paro, this was part, she was already becoming Jewish. Bas Paro, why would she get involved in this? And whether you say she was becoming Jewish, you look at the Medrash right after that, right, that says, she saw Ruasa Baruch HaKodesh Asid Moshiach Yisrael Lisgadol Al Yada. V'hadesa Mashkama Umareves He Ben Araseh L'Tala Yor. She went out every morning to the Nile to look for the Jewish baby because she had a vision that she was going to play a role in the Jews leaving Egypt. So it's not the way we thought. Bas Paro just happens to be here. But Bas Paro, whether she's becoming Jewish, whether she's an Alexander Schindler, she's a righteous Gentile who just is, and there's always one. Rabbi Soloveitchik said, and that's maybe the point of her in this story, there's always going to be, in every gullus, there's going to be a non-Jew. It's going to be, there will be few and far between those righteous Gentiles. So a limited number of trees at Yad Vashem for them. But they're going to have, the Jewish resistance movement is going to have allies. It's going to have champions amongst the non-Jews who are fighting the decree. And perhaps, if you go as far as the Gemara Sota, she already was becoming Jewish. She's part of the resistance movement. And if you ever think about it, you ever wonder why it's called Sefer Shmos? Because before you walked in here, you thought the whole story of leaving Egypt was about God. But this book is called Sefer Shmos because it's emphasizing that there were human beings involved in the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim process. The book of Shmos is about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And lastly, in terms of another proof, look at the bottom of page 3, an idea which probably you never thought of before. And I'm sorry for dating myself. This Rabbi Horace will give me permission. But if you go back to the old Ten Commandments movie with Charlton Heston, right? So there's a scene, if you watch the movie, those movies do us a lot of disservices because they give us ideas that maybe are not called Yocheved, Yoshevel, and things like that. But they give us ideas which are not correct. But there's a fascinating scene right before Moshe goes to Har Sinai. Moshe is walking up. He's walking he's walking with the sheep, and he gets to there's a mountain that's all red and fiery, on the horizon. And some guy comes over there and says, "Don't go over there. It's the mountain of God. Be careful." And Moses goes anyway. So that's not. So when you see that, you go, I don't know. But if you look at the pasuk, what's the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "Yinam and Saxon," right towards the bottom of page 3. Right? Akar ha'midbar v'yavo el har ha'elokim. He went to the mountain of God. The mountain of God. Rashi says, Hashem Asid. It's going to be the mountain of God. The movie, though, passes like Sparno on the bottom left. But the Sparno says, you know why it's called Har HaElokim? It's a Pashut shot. The reason why it's called the mountain of God is because everyone knew this was a holy mountain. And therefore, who was searching for who? Was God searching for Moshe? Or was Moshe searching for God? If you read the Sparner's way or Charlton Heston's way, Moshe Rabbeinu was already, before God ever spoke to him, Moshe Rabbeinu, as Sparner says, right, was full of he was looking for God. So I suggest, and that's not crazy. Moshe Rabbeinu, who stood up for a Jew being beaten by another Jew. Moshe Rabbeinu, who stood up to a Mitzrayim being beaten by a Jew. feels he can't do this. But the truth is, Moshe Rabbeinu, according to this, Moshe Rabbeinu was looking to God. So it is possible that really, if you put all this together, that the Miyaldos, the non-Jewish midwives, like the simple Shahat Ifriot, were paid off by the Jewish leaders to fight with the priests. That the names are not mentioned in the beginning of Parsha Shmos because the fact that really there were many Leviim fighting the decree. Just this one baby got through. That Bas Para was either becoming Jewish or maybe a sympathizer. She was looking to play this role. Why is it Batya, daughter of God? This is a special person. It's not just happenstance that this happened. And as Moshe was looking for God, if you put this together, there seems to be a second story. This week's Parsha Be'era of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The human role as opposed to the divine. Now I share this with this idea with you, not to limit God's role, but it has a very important message for all of us. When I was younger, you know what really bothered me? What bothered me was the dice in a game. I never understood why there were dice in a game. If I could figure out how to conquer Kamachaka, why do I have to worry if I'm going to get a 6 or a 5 or a this or a that? If I can figure out a smart way to do something, you know, but ladies, young ladies, you will learn as you get older, there are dice in life. And that the more, as much as we plan God's plans, and God plays a role in everything. But on the other hand, there's a dialectic on this issue about what's God's role and what's our role in everything we do in life. So on one hand, if you think that everything is like Parshas Va'era, everything is the human role, it's not true. There are dice. God is behind the scenes moving things around. But on the other hand, I suggest to you can't retreat in life and think everything is Parsha Shmos. God is doing everything. I will sit back and on the roof and tell the folks, I don't need you to save me because I believe in God. And there are times in life, like at Purim, which is our next holiday, where we emphasize the human role. Megillas Esther, God's name is missing. We put Hamelech at the top of every column of most Megillas now, because it's killing us. We can't find God's name, so we write Hamelech at the top of every column. We work at the Psukim to get to God's hidden role, right? So that at the time of Hester. But I suggest to you there'll be times in your life where you'll feel more like Purim, and there'll be times in your life you'll feel more like Pesach. But the truth is, at all times in our lives, God is there. At all times in life, God is expecting us to play an active role as well. And therefore, you'll find many times in your life where something happens to you you don't understand. Something terrible, something great, it's something you just didn't, it seemed like happenstance. But if you go back, you can see where there were human beings involved. You see that there are, places where you thought that you did things. You know what? There must have been someone behind the curtains who is on the street. Next time, when we sit down for our Pesach Seder, it's funny, the Rambam, at the very beginning of the sources, Rabbi Soloveitchik quotes a very interesting Rambam I had never seen. I was preparing this. The Rambam says that Moshe's name's not the Haggadah, right? So the Rambam says no. The Rambam says, you see the Rambam, top towards the top of page 1, that the Rambam says, Pesach night mitzvah of Rabbanim, you tell them the story of Egypt, right? And you see the last time, Im haya haben gadol chacham aviu man shi'ira Mitzrayim nisim shenasu Lanu al Yudei Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rambam says you can't take the Moshe out of the Haggadah, you can't take Hashem out of the Megillah. Everything in our lives has a divine role, has a human role. Our job is to see both as we go ahead. Thank you so much, Rabbi Orban.